children what we need and give it to them in the purest and most supportive way we can. Another piece. For years I was the teacher in charge of the Bell Buddies, which was the organization that really greeted the fifth graders when they came into school. Very interesting organization because our children came in and I would grab them and they would be a part of this organization that said they were going to lend a helping hand. Many of the activities that we went to were in the elementary schools. There would be no reason why our fifth graders would not have exactly that same experience. Interestingly enough, one of the times that I did go to one of the elementary schools, the only problem was that the fifth graders and the sixth graders were so late that it was almost a non-productive program for our children at Bell. They were in cooperation with our fifth graders. Besides which, the peer group association. We have children that are being tutored by the seventh graders. We have children that are being worked with in peer mediation by the eighth graders. There's a beautiful part of that community of learning that can only exist in what I believe. I mean, I think the ideal would be the 5-8, and I feel like I become very passionate about it. But the reality is that unity of grades would be a true commitment to middle school education. As educators, we want the best for the children, we want the best for the community. And I think we have to make the new decision.
I'd just like to add a little bit to that. I'm also a Chappaqua resident, 2 kids, 4 grandkids, and I live on 7 bridges. So, okay. We're all citing our qualifications here. I just wanted to speak. I am a school social worker, and I just wanted to speak very briefly of something that Ken hit on, very strong connections with our youngsters at this time of tremendous physical, emotional, and intellectual change. This is something so critical to the work with these particular youngsters. I see children across the 3 grades now. I can very easily see children across the 4 grades. And children come to me mostly on their own to discuss things for which they need a great sense of trust. You see them sort of looking in my door in 6th grade, and then an older friend may bring them in. And I had a very moving thing happen just the other day. The very big captain of our 8th grade wrestling team sensed that a 6th grader was having some real troubles with friendships and being somewhat isolated. And he came in with that youngster and said, "Could we please sit down and talk to you?" And the 6th grader was, I cannot tell you, the captain of that Bell wrestling team did much better work than I did. He really connected with that kid. It was an intergrade connection that was extremely important. I would also like to just piggyback very quickly on what Andy said. We have many, many organizations here that cross all 3 grades now. Bell Entertainers, Ken and I were talking about the really successful senior citizens luncheon here, where all 3 grades served the seniors in the community, provided entertainment. The kids work together as a community. That's such an important word for us. And I see it, I really see it working just as well with 5-8. But needing those years, 2 years, not going to do it in the relationships and the trust. The trust to talk about a lot of the issues that you're very concerned about, and rightly so. We want to help you with those. We don't presume to give you answers, but we want to help your kids with those, and we need those years to do it. So, thank you.
One more thing. I have 2 older children, and then I have a child in Greeley. And just one small little addition. Both my 2 older children went to the Bell School when it was the 7-8 school. We used to call it the swinging door school because the children came in the 7th grade and they left in the 8th grade. I'm not saying the education was not wonderful, but the reality was that there was no school spirit. And just yesterday, my younger one, who happened to be over at a pub club in town, said to me, "Mom, what was fabulous is that I saw a bunch of boys from Bell School come in all saying Bell Lacrosse on their shorts." It was so wonderful. They're so proud of their environment. To build this into our community, there's the difference. To have a strong middle education, that's the commitment.
My name is Christy Rudell. I'd like to go back to the fifth grade question a little more because I think everybody talks about it. Maybe there was a meeting I missed. It's very possible. I think there's a lot of concerns about what are the problems, what are the fifth graders going to lose by leaving elementary school? What are you talking about slow entry? And I think we all have an idea about what that is. I missed the meeting to explain that term. And people who are going to be involved in this, in dealing with moving the fifth graders to the middle school, in your head, what are the specific things you want to be careful about to make sure that that experience they currently get at the fifth grade elementary school, that you want to be sure they continue to get in the middle school? For example, I mean, I'm assuming, I don't know, right now the thing about fifth grade is that's the first year they start going, they change classrooms, but they don't have 4 teachers, they only have 2. It's like, for example, that's something you wouldn't want to, at least that's in Warren with me.
Not true at all.
Okay, sorry. But, so what of their experience in elementary school in terms of slow entry, you want to be sure and preserve, and do you think you can do that? And I understand you don't have all the details worked out. But also, some things I've just heard from the last 2 people who spoke, what opportunities do you see that they're going to get by being in a middle school that is age appropriate and all that stuff that they don't have right now? If you could talk sort of about the problems and opportunities specifically about fifth graders, excuse me if you've already explained that in another meeting, that would help me a lot.
We have difficulty with the mic, just hold it. We have a design team that was originally organized to plan a 6-8, 1,200 student middle school up at the Greeley campus. However, that committee, that design team has evolved into one that has been studying such issues as where does the fifth grade belong? What kind of program would we develop for the fifth grade? And that committee is now waiting to make its next move. That group consists of fifth grade teachers who made presentations about the developmental needs of fifth grade students and described the fifth grade program and helped us to evaluate Bell as a place for fifth graders, and also helped us work with the architects to see how a fifth grade program would fit into a new school. That committee also had teachers from Bell, parents, and administrators. We are at a point where we see many of the existing programs, such as the fifth grade curriculum, intact. However, we do see some opportunities for enhancement. For example, foreign language would be delivered to the fifth grade. We have technology labs in the middle school. Fifth graders would have access to those technology labs. Again, I'm giving you broad strokes because this committee will be charged with redesigning programs with strong community input. I'm envisioning the establishment of as many as a dozen subcommittees that will report to our building planning committee. We have, in addition to our technology labs, home and career labs. And our home and career program is not your traditional home and economics. They actually design companies. Our 8th grade students this year began to develop community service projects through their home and careers. They interview. They develop resumes. Not that we want our 5th graders developing resumes, but our 8th graders, yes. Many of the students in that program recently presented at a state conference, and some of them have gone on to national, have received state recognition, and will be going on to national competition. And that program is coordinated, so our leadership club is coordinated through our home and careers. There's definitely a place for our 5th grade students. So those are some examples of enhancements. I do see the 5-8, we can call it intergenerational or cross-grade exchange as a positive. Lyndall Bowl, sitting to my right, talked about our senior citizen program. We had 6th through 8th graders in here today, and I was proud of every one of them. We had waiters and waitresses who stepped over to the table when one of our jazz bands, we have 2 of them, were playing big band music. And first the student came over to me and she said, would it be all right if we danced with the senior citizens? Well, they were bringing senior citizens out on the floor. They were great role models for those 6th graders who were a little bit more inhibited about doing that. This happened last year. We had, in this room, 30, 40 couples, senior citizens, dancing with 7th and 8th grade students. Now, I'm not a dancer, and they actually dragged me out on the floor, too. But that type of modeling is very positive. We have a peer mediation program and a peer mentoring, peer tutoring program. We have 8th graders tutoring 6th grade students. What a great opportunity for 8th graders to mentor 5th grade students. We could establish a leadership program, very similar to the leadership program that the high school has, with its seniors working with the incoming freshmen. All right, now, a question about slow entry. In addition to programmatic enhancements, the schools will both be designed, Bell redesigned and Seven Bridges designed, with this concept of slow entry. And what does that mean? It means that we'll keep the 5th and 6th graders housed together. Well, why? Does that mean that we're concerned about 5th graders interacting with 8th graders? No, it has to do with the fact that the 5th and 6th grade programs are somewhat similar in terms of curriculum. There may be opportunities for multi-grade exchanges. There may be opportunities for teachers to make connections 5th to 6th. Teachers may be able to share information about student needs. We'll be able to do that in the building, and it'll be particularly effective being in a 5-8 building. We'll know so much about students as they progress through our building in a 4-year experience. But in communicating with many middle school principals throughout the state and throughout the country, we learned of this slow entry concept. And basically, we would assign those 5th and 6th grade classes not only together, but close to the common areas and towards the front of the building. This is the architectural recommendation of these other schools. So that we have plans. You see that in the packet. If you notice, if you look at both of the if you take a look at the bond referendum proposal, and you look on page 3, you'll see the main floor plan. You see the 5th and 6th grade classrooms are located on the main floor by the auditorium, near the cafeteria, near the gym, near the main office, near the nurse's office. They're right in the front of the building, on the main floor. Then if you skip ahead to the reconfigured bell, and if you take a look at page 13, you'll see that on our first floor we have 5th grade classrooms, near the cafeteria, near the gymnasium, which is down by where it says boys locker room. And if you flip over the page to 14, you'll see that our 5th and 6th graders are on the second floor, which is the main floor, because we're located on a slight hill, by the gymnasium, by the auditorium, again, in the front of the building, in a common area. There's a psychological advantage to that, according to the principals, in that parents feel comfortable knowing that if they walk in the front door of the school, their children will be immediately accessible. So.
I'd just like to add one very quick thing. When you're asking about what will be available to 5th graders, it might not be available unless they come here. Ken Mitchell mentioned the jazz bands, and that we have 2 jazz bands. We have a chamber orchestra I discovered today. We have a wonderful orchestra. We find so often with our kids, a lot of our kids are serving on a town committee now, Newcastle Cares. What these kids have accomplished is mind-blowing. They persuaded the town board to build lighted basketball courts. The town applied for a grant to do this. The reason I'm bringing these up is the kids keep rising to the expectations that we give them, and I see the whole community working on these things together. I see this being available to the 5th graders to work with the 8th graders and the 7th graders on these kind of things, to really get their feet wet in a middle school experience early and with good guidance, good solid help.
I'll add one thing to your question, too.
I'll speak from the science department point of view. One thing that they get is when they come to the middle school, they go from having a science teacher to a whole science department. There are more resources and more different kinds of equipment and possible experiments they can do. The other day I had an experience where I had a whole bunch of students after school working on some experiments. And one student was building a hot air balloon, the other was building robots. The third student wanted to work with me on chemistry, and I just couldn't do it. I was watching these other kids. So he says, you know what, I'll go on to the other teacher next door. And so he did. He found another science teacher that he could work with. And that's the kind of place where there are so many science teachers that are available. Some have pets in their rooms, some have a specialty with rocks and minerals. So it's a great resource to be able to have that available to kids with an interest.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Berman. I have 3 children, one 8th grader who's going to high school next year, 7th grader and a 4th grader. And I'd like to direct my question primarily to Kathy Mason and to Ken Mitchell. My main question is, if this bond issue fails, what are the consequences going to be at the high school and the middle school? I'm a little more familiar with the middle school. I attended and graduated, thank goodness, from Horace Greeley. And I can remember 30 some odd years ago, parking was a problem and transportation was a problem. And I can only imagine with these enrollment projections that it's going to be exacerbated into a nightmare proportions. And I really like to have you address the academic ramifications, the social ramifications, the emotional ramifications for my children when they reach the high school level, which is, I say, I'm not as familiar with, and it's been 30 some odd years since I've been there, and also at the middle school level.
Thank you. Agree with the RAD. How wonderful. Ken and I have spent time, especially in these last weeks, talking about the fact that, in the truest sense, Kathy, the middle schoolers now have enjoyed a rich program, but certainly have found the pinch of increasing enrollment here. I was in the building just last week, and again, while walking into Bell in the morning is always a wonderful experience with cookies being baked in the cafeteria, the reality is one of overcrowded halls, of large classes, and one only can be here to see classes change to recognize what that feels like. In one sense, Ken and I would share a concern that we would hope the students who certainly are in Bell now would be students who could come to us if really benefiting from the additional resources that would come to us as a result of this building, a successful bond and building. Let me mention that having worked through the design team in the latest report from our architects, we're talking about were the project to be approved as early as we hope it would be here. We're talking about 24 months of construction in Horace Greeley. So in essence, what we're talking about is having to stage the existing population in change process, as well as anticipating more youngsters. So let me be clear that each year, for the next few years, we're seeing what is really a step-ladder increase in enrollment. With each 50 new students, which is the average for the next few years that we anticipate. There are certainly exactly, according to demographic study, 50 more students this year on campus than there were last year. And we anticipate somewhere between 35 and 50 again next September. The following year, the same. That within 2 years, we're looking at the addition of 200 youngsters. Now, let me talk about what that means across the curriculum in the high school, which is certainly different than a middle school program, and dramatically different from the way we define the instructional program at an elementary level. That is to say, on the average in a high school, such as Greeley, for every 25 students, we're talking about a class. A class that then is multiplied across 5 disciplines, the core areas of math, science, English, social studies, and foreign language, and then has an impact on the what we call the elective program, the rich program, that expands at the high school to offer students opportunities in many disciplines. So for every 50 students, we're talking about an incredible escalation then on the daily schedule, the teaching assignments, and quite honestly, on the space allocation. Currently, this year, 1/3 of our faculty are sharing instructional space. There was a time at Greeley, not too many years ago, when each teacher enjoyed the freedom of his or her own classroom. Those of you who were at Greeley 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, or certainly the current parents of Greeley will share with you that the milieu is one in which students have constant access to their teachers. That means that I have teachers on campus at 7 o'clock in the morning. I have faculty on campus at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and now that we're into the spring and final exam time, I will have faculty on the campus at 8 o'clock at night. The idea here is whether it be individual students, such as we'll talk about in terms of all of this connection to a relationship with staff, or it talks to large group instruction. The fact of the matter is that kids find their way to teachers at Horace Greeley High School. Each time they share space, that is in some way compromised. So I can share with you that this year, it is not unusual at the end of the day when the bell rings to have students come to my office and say, do you know where Mr. Otto is at this time of the day? Do you know where I can find Mr. O'Brien? We feel that over time, that's going to have a dramatic impact on the relationships and the quality of services delivered to our students. I would share with you that at a certain point, without additional space, we will be unable to house what is an increasing elective program. One of the greatest joys at Greeley is to hire in new teachers, and with increasing enrollment, we will do more of that, we know, who bring a particular passion or interest or talent in an area that we can maximize by creating new courses in the curriculum. The constraints of the schedule around physical space and time are realities. So I would share with you that, at night I can lay my head on the pillow and say, I don't ever want to see the time that I would have to say to a new teacher who is very passionate and very skilled about offering our 11th and 12th graders elective in Shakespeare, and my having to say, no, it's just not going to fit right now, whether it be space or schedule. You mentioned a real concern that is currently at Greeley, so imagine with me what it might be as we look to the future, and that is one of the logistics of the campus itself in terms of access, driving, and parking. It has not been an easy year of deliberation on our campus currently, but certainly with the our building planning team, we have come to a point where in the next few weeks we will share with our students and our parents that we will be limiting student driving on and parking on campus next year so that juniors will not have those privileges. It's an inevitability when you look at the increasing enrollment. And while for some parents that may be terrific, it postpones my child with free access to our car, it also does put some limitations on what families need kids to be doing. So maybe a longer answer to answer you by saying that the high school, I believe, is the kind of environment that will grow and respond, but we definitely need the facilities and the access to do that. I can share with you, please understand when I say 2 years of construction is a major challenge on that campus. Were we not to start the building now and be delayed another year, so let me go through it clearly. Were the bond to successfully pass now, we know that we would spend the next year in specific planning. And we're doing major renovations. I know that many of you have been here through this process. So we're talking about an expanded and renovated science, math, technology facility. We're talking about 14 additional classrooms on campus. We're talking about a student center where students can, as the numbers grow, have places to socialize appropriately. We're talking about a need for an additional music room. We are currently housing 4 of the performing arts programs in 3 academic areas, sites, classrooms. it's getting tight. I would share with you that included is an expanded office area, and it's not about Kathy having a bigger office. It is about that I share that main office with the support services, our guidance counselors, our social workers, our psychologists, and I would share with you that one of the functions at Breeden is clearly that that is a public area where we welcome parents and students who can be in situations of needing immediate intervention, to students who are doing the simple process of planning their next step in high school, all of which should be provided in a comfortable space. In addition, we have college reps, as many as 3 on a given day in the fall and winter, who should be housed appropriately with our students. This year they are meeting, they met in the vestibule of our auditorium, in the back of our auditorium, and one of our guidance counselors had to change offices every other day with a part-time person. So that will give you an indication of how this is not a frivolous piece of the bond. It's a necessary piece as we look at 1,500. Does that answer your question a bit?
Okay, we're already at that point. We're having difficulty right now. We have what I call subject incompatible classrooms, which means that I had cited this earlier in response to a question about the science labs. We have math classrooms, math classes scheduled in science classrooms. We have foreign language classrooms scheduled in health classrooms, or scheduled in mathematics classrooms, or in English classrooms, and that is increasing. It is very likely that, and we're still fine-tuning the master schedule, but it is very likely that we will be over 60% shared classrooms in this building. Now that impacts teachers' ability to have long-term projects. It also increases the likelihood that we'll have subject incompatible classrooms. It also increases the likelihood that students are not scheduled in proximity of the core of their classes. This coming year, we will go from having 840 students now to 916 this September. And we're adding additional sections, additional classes, actually a full team in the 6th grade. However, because we do not have a sufficient number of classrooms to accommodate the sections in the 7th grade, we are adding teacher assistants to 7th grade core classes, the core classes of English, social studies, science, and math. These teaching assistants will help the teachers to deal with class sizes of 27. So it's actually 26.7. That's the average class size in this year's 6th grade, next year's 7th grade. I am greatly concerned about this particular 7th grade, this incoming 6th grade and this incoming 7th grade classes experience through Bell, since it is unlikely that we'll be able to add sections. It's not unlikely, it is virtually impossible for us to add classes in a quality way for those students. They will likely go through Bell in class sizes that are comparatively high, and then when they go to Greeley, it is quite possible, and Kathy and I have spoken about this, that they will experience an overcrowded campus. So those students are having a difficult experience here. And people say, I can say to my teachers, this is transitional, you'll get through it, don't worry, we'll work it out. But it's not transitional for the students. This is their middle school experience, this will be their high school experience. Now, people have asked about the year 2001, 2002. Here's the situation. We do not have the space to accommodate 970 plus students. Remember, 3 years ago, we opened with approximately 750 students. And that was following the addition. And the addition really captured 5 classrooms because we lost classrooms when we expanded the technology room and when we added a cafeteria space. So what will happen in the year 2001, 2002 is that we will have to transplant approximately 100 students, which is equivalent to a full team, and we keep the students together in English, social studies, science, and math. We've established a committee we call Committee 2001. They will be meeting, some of us jokingly call it a space odyssey, no pun intended. We're searching for space, and we will be searching throughout this community, probably in the early fall. We'll try to be creative. People will ask, well, where will we go? I have no idea at this point. That's the purpose of this committee. We'll probably cycle teams out of the building over the course of the year. Again, groups of 100 students, and we'll have more information once we develop that plan. The goal is to develop a proposal by November so that the school board can begin planning its budget around that relocation process. So we've exhausted the space as of next year. Next year it is very tight. Currently I'm working on the master schedule. I'm at a point where I'm fine-tuning it. And fine-tuning it means that I'm plugging in classrooms. And when we identify classrooms, it's not done arbitrarily, it's not done capriciously, it's done with great thought. It's done to ensure that students aren't moving from the 4th floor to the 1st floor, from the 1st floor to the 4th floor, from the 4th. But when you start to plug because there's an available space at a particular time, you're doing it purely for functional reasons. You're not doing it for educational reasons. That is where there is going to be an impact on the facility. Now, you had asked a question about the academic ramifications. Kathy Mason raised several issues. They are identical issues at Bell, and I will not review those. However, there are certain social ramifications of having an overcrowded school. There's a psychology, the classical psychology experiment, in which rats are placed in a contained area and they begin to devour one another, they begin to assault one another. And not that I'm saying our middle school students would ever do anything like that, but there's certainly tension when anybody, whether they're 40 years old or whether they're 10 years old, are placed in an environment that is overcrowded. We want our students to be comfortable. This year this coming year, we're modifying the schedule to ensure that students aren't traveling in the hallways at the same time so that we're not running into these serious traffic jams, which are very problematic. And again, psychologically, it's very uncomfortable to be in such an overcrowded situation, and that's simply going to be exacerbated.
I'd like to add something too from the elementary point of view, because the question was raised more to the middle school and high school. But it's a definite problem for 2 of the 3 elementary schools if in fact we're not successful with the bond vote. Our cafeteria space is already crowded. At Roaring Brook we start lunch at about 10:40 in the morning and end at 1. With the addition of a couple more classrooms, cafeteria space is overcrowded. We're also facing the possibility of moving some of our special area people, such as art teachers, onto a cart, where they would have to actually go from class to class instead of having their own classroom as well. And buses. With the increase of another 50 students per elementary school over the next couple of years, we'll probably be adding another bus, which is already a problem in lineups, in dismissal and arrival time. So it is a deeper issue and it affects all 3 levels of our district.
One short follow-up, which can get a short answer. Ken, I understand that next year we're going to be able to accommodate the students here at Bell School. The following year, we will have to relocate some of the students, probably, whether we pass this bond or not. If we do not pass the bond the year afterwards, what are the implications? How many students are going to be removed from this school and relocated?
Well, right now we're anticipating we're moving 100 students. And informally, we've discussed the 7th grade as being the target year. Well, why the 7th grade? Well, because we want the 6th grade to transition into the school and feel comfortable. The 8th graders are faced with 5 state assessments. It's likely that the 7th grade would be the grade to move. I understand the question. How many? Well, if we're moving one full team of 7th graders, then perhaps we would move, as the numbers increase, we would develop a formula based on the number of years that we'll need to plan for alternatives. So we may continue to cycle the 7th grade. It may be 150 the subsequent year. It may be 200 the year after that. Again, I've not looked out that far. I've tried to be very optimistic about this. So we're planning in a 3-year, for a 3-year scenario, this existing year and then 2 subsequent years. So the number will increase.
So in other words, perhaps instead of one 7th grade team going, it might be 2.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, I'm Larry Clark. I have 2 kids in the district, 6th grade and 3rd grade. I would like to thank the PTA for